All right, going on to my debriefing of my trip to Roaring Spring. I left that otherworldly, heavenly place. Uh-oh, Mango wants back up this moment. I'm not sure if he can jump up, he's so fat. I have to help him. Anyway, Mervin's is just a little ways away, and I went up there. Now, when we get there, the scene darkens. Mervin had told me the night before that if I came, do come, he said, but I probably can't get down or won't be going down to the shop with you. He had fallen on the ice, and it was freezing rain, and it was something I'm always as careful as I can be. I'm going out to the barn and stuff. Well, he had fallen, and he'd hurt his knees, and. But I should still come. He said he can, once he gets up, he can move around. Well, I had put in the trunk of my car a wheelchair that folded up. It was just a cheap one, really, just in case he wanted that. And I had some a piece of walnut firewood that I thought he should craft with because it was too good to burn. So I knew about that. But he seemed to be okay with it. He'd managed, after he'd fallen, he'd still managed to feed the animals. I've been there so many times, I don't like to count it, where I get injured out there. And, and I wonder, can I get the work done before I go back to the house, or had I better just go straight back? But, well, I pulled up, and I walked up to the door. And I had a book I wanted him to see too, and I heard him speak, and he said, "Yeah, come in. It's because it's a step down to where you go in," and I did, and I said to him, how are you doing? And he said, "Well, not so good today." Well, you see, the reason I say it really darkened. His wife, Laura, was in the hospital. She had a blockage. It took a little while I still don't thoroughly understand what happened, but apparently one of her intestines twisted, or it was a blockage, and they'd taken her to the hospital, and not in horse and buggy. They've got drivers. He's got family all around and friends, and they had taken her to the hospital, and it might have happened that very morning. I think it probably did. And I said, "Well, do you want to ride to the hospital? We'll go there. Forget the lesson. We can go there." And he said, "No, there really wasn't anything he could do there. He'd go in the evening with his family. Someone in his family would pick him up, and they'd go in the evening. And he should probably just stay here." And so we were to go on with the lesson as usual. And he could walk around. I showed him the book that I had brought, and he pored over it. It's a book I bought, a rather expensive book I bought when I was in Portugal at the Museum of Decorative Arts, at the shops of the Museum of Decorative Arts, because I wanted to show him some examples of the finest furniture ever made, probably, at least in Europe. 18th century stuff. That's what the shop in Lisbon does. I've talked about that elsewhere, because his work reminded me of that work. Inlay and veneer, no, not really veneer, but inlay. And he pored over it and looked at it and had questions. And so that was interesting. We got talking about that before any start on the Pennsylvania Dutch. And and I also had taken him here, Mango. You can. I'd also taken him this. I can't remember if I've shown you this before, because I thought this was the kind of thing that he could crank out them so easy, and I thought I should have left it there with him, really, in a way. But I use it all the time. When you take your boot off, you put your foot in there, and it peels the boot off. You put one foot on this, and there, and then you take that boot off, and then you put that foot there, and then you take the other boot off. and I didn't leave it with him. I knew I should, but I had traced the outline that way and this way and this way, and so I gave him enough that he could make them. He was interested. He said, "Oh, I'll make them." And now that I know about that shop down there with the Mennonite angels, they could certainly be selling them. I said, I think you could sell these for probably $25. They're so useful. Once people realize how useful they are. Well, anyway, then we got to the Pennsylvania Dutch, and it was harder than I thought. What I had decided to do was I would get the words that are most frequently used, words that in another chart I describe as words that must be recognized. Or if you're a foreign speaker, you've got to get control of these words. The conjunctions, and, or, but, nor, for. The primary adverbs, very, well, not, never, always. They're called primary adjectives. I wanted to find out, was there something you could add to the end of an adjective that would make it an adverb? I used the word friendly. Well, that might not have been the best example, but something like easily, ly. In German, it's lich, lich. And I wanted to know, is there something in Pennsylvania that does that? And then the hard part was I decided, all right, let's go for the prepositions. Now, I remember when I was, I think, maybe a sixth grader, and I don't know if that's still the case, where we had to memorize a list of about 40 prepositions, and they were in alphabetical order, at, above, across, below, beneath, on it went, and we had to be able to write down 60 or so. I never made my students do that because I think they had already done that. I don't know. But I knew I needed to have these words, and to get them, I'm using my spelling system, mind you, and they very often were not anything like the English words. And many were like the German word, but not exactly like it. And I was spelling them my way, and I'd say behind. How do you say behind? Like, a cat is behind the chair. I would say that sentence, and he would think it out in Pennsylvania Dutch, and then zero in on here's that word, and he'd say it, and I'd spell what I was hearing, and I got we made it pretty much the whole way through that list, but boy, that was tedious. But anyway, then I said, that's enough for now, and we went back to his situation. Now, meanwhile, the phone was ringing, probably rang about 5 times, and he gets so angry. He's not a man to get angry, but those are marketers, and they're the bane of their existence, that the phone is ringing all the time. Somebody's selling them something. And that's why if I call him, I always call him at 7 o'clock. Now, he told me 7 o'clock is a good time to call. And so I wait till 7 before. And he said, and if you call, say right away, say Mervin, and then I'll know. But I said, can't you do something about that? Can't you shut that off? And he said, yeah, we can take it off the hook, I think he said. But he was waiting for calls about his wife and how his wife was doing. So as I say, this was darker. And they're not high tech by any means. So if there's some way that you can think of that situation, they have the phone is in his shop, and it's in the house, and the same thing was going on in the shop. It would ring, and he just kind of have to let it ring until it stopped. It's an improvement could probably be made. All right, he didn't need the wheelchair, but he did. He liked the wood, the walnut, and I said, well, I've got about 20 pieces like that, and I'll bring them gradually in my trunk. Now, as I was leaving, I noticed something I'd never noticed before when I was leaving. I heard his horse whinny, and that just reminded me. I knew what that horse was saying. I'd never met that horse yet. But that horse knew something was different. And that horse was basically kind of saying, it's time to feed me, or, where's my grain, or hi there, thinking maybe I was Mervin. And so anyway, on we went. And I don't know how his wife is doing. I'm not going to call him to bother him, but he said they were going to put her on an IV and see if they could get her intestine unblocked. I don't know. So anyway, that was darker. Bye for now.